Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be discussing what makes a spiral different from a scroll, and I'll also be showing you how to lay out a spiral so you can create a spiral-shaped scroll form. The diagram on the left is a spiral, and the diagram on the right is a classic form of scroll. Spirals are always circular in form, and the center of the spiral always winds up pretty close to the center of that circle. And that's because spirals start off like scrolls, but once the initial wraps are established, the rate of growth from that point on is very, very regular. And that results in this jelly roll look because you're always adding the same amount to the outside, so it just keeps wrapping around in a very consistent manner. And the line that defines a scroll, on the other hand, is never consistent. It starts in the center, and the rate of expansion just keeps increasing with each wrap of the scroll, so you have a shape that can't be circular, and the center point always moves off to the side. So the scroll that I had illustrated in the previous drawing is made up of a series of quadrants that are consistently getting smaller and smaller as you move towards the center of the scroll. So there is no center point to this scroll. Each quadrant has its own radius, and as you assemble these quadrants together, the outside radius forms the scroll. So for example, if you have a scroll that's made up of a dozen different quadrants, then you have to establish a dozen different compass points in order to draw all the different radiuses that make up that scroll. The spiral, on the other hand, was drawn using this grid. The spiral is assembled with a series of quadrants like the scroll, but unlike the scroll, each quadrant was measured from the center crosshairs of this grid. So the entire shape was developed from the center of this grid, not a series of compass points that keeps moving around the work surface. The markings that are on the two scales that make up this grid were established by adding up the bar that I intend to use with this spiral and the spacing that I intended to leave between the different wraps of the spiral. When I had that established, then I divided that measurement in 4, and those are the markings that you see on the scales. So as you'll see in a moment, each complete revolution of this spiral is going to add 4 of these markings to the diameter of the spiral. The circle in the center is the part of the spiral where this grid doesn't really work anymore, and that section's easy to freehand when you're forming up the spiral, so I just leave it as a blank space. When I start the spiral, I need to use smaller increments than the grid, and I have to sort of basically develop a spiral that works up to a point where I can start using each marking on the grid. So as you can see here, the first quadrant starts at 0 and goes up to about the halfway point between the 0 and the 1 on the vertical leg of the grid. From the halfway point, I can go over to the first marking on the horizontal leg of the grid. From there, I'm going just shy of the second marking on the bottom vertical leg of the grid. And from there I can go just past the second marking on the right-hand horizontal leg of the grid. And then finally from there I can move to the third marking on the top vertical leg of the grid. At this point the spiral is large enough I can start using the grid, so each quadrant is going to increase by 1 marking. So at this point you should be wondering how I'm drawing these circles, because I'm starting with 1 marking, let's say the third marking on one arm, and I'm ending up on the 4th marking on another arm, and you can't do that with a compass. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up my compass on the crosshairs, and I've established the arc at the smaller end of the dimension. So in this example I'm on the 5th marking, and I'm going to be moving up to the 6th marking. To describe the arc, I'm simply going to move my compass point up the vertical arm of the grid until the pencil point of the compass is at the 6th marking, and then I'm going to scribe that arc from the top down. The arrow here indicates where the compass point wound up on the vertical arm. That gives me the main sweep of the arc that I need, and I'm just going to freehand that little bit that I need to connect back down to the horizontal part of the grid. It's not perfect, but it produces a very convincing spiral. And here's the next section, and again I have the arrow indicating where the compass point wound up. And then you just continue that process until you get the shape of the spiral that you're after. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in supporting this channel, the simplest way, of course, is to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have questions and you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at either one of the addresses that I have listed here. It may take me a couple of days, but I will get back to you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.